Okay, welcome back to the Are You Strong show. I want to say, an extremely extraordinary guest on the show tonight. And what's great about this young man is he and I go back about 10 years when he was in college, 10 years ago when he was in college at Rutgers, and he interned for our firm. And I'm hoping he had a good time while he was here. It's been a long time ago, but I think he had a good time. Then he went off, graduated, and got into the professional ranks of lacrosse. And now he's doing some really cool stuff. He's in the real estate business, having a lot of fun, has his own business, doing cool stuff. But welcome to the show, Joe Nardella.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. I know it's been a while since we've got to catch up. I'm looking forward to our conversation tonight and kind of seeing what's going on in your world.
Oh yeah, so we're gonna have some fun. I got a whole slew of things to ask you to find out what's going on in your world. But before I get going grilling you, why don't you just tell, the audience just a little bit about yourself, where you're from, school, job, what you're doing, and so they can kind of get an idea.
Yeah, so I'm 31 years old. I grew up in upstate New York in a small town called Cazenovia outside of Syracuse. I've been an athlete pretty much my whole life. I went to Rutgers for college. I played lacrosse. I studied economics and entrepreneurship. I interned at Jeff's firm back in 2015, I believe it was, in my senior year when I was 21 years old. So, you know, 10 full years ago.
Wow.
I did have a lot of fun. I currently run a business called Face Off Factory. We do nationwide lacrosse training. We hold camps, clinics, weekly trainings, recruiting events, you name it. I also do residential real estate for Compass in Boston, and I have played the professional lacrosse now for 9 seasons. And currently play for the Maryland Whip Snakes in the PLL and the Albany Firewolves in the NLL.
So Joe, how do you go from college lacrosse to pro lacrosse? What's that transition like?
So you're drafted when you're a senior. Following graduation, usually it's a pretty quick turnaround. Lacrosse is a spring sport. If you're playing in the NCAA tournament, you're right up until graduation in May. The pro season starts right after Memorial Day. So following the conclusion of the championships,
You're going.
a lot of these college guys are hopping right into training camp or following graduation right into training camp. And then the next weekend we're playing, and then we're pretty much going straight through Labor Day.
So there's no break.
Not really. No, not for the college guys. So it's kind of an adjustment period. When I was drafted, the face-off guy on Boston was pretty good at the time. And he was playing well. So I didn't get my shot until, August August, after my senior season. So I pretty much had 3 months of just trying to train on my own and stay ready for the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, let's go backwards in time a little bit. You're in high school, you're up in way upstate New York by Syracuse. What was the motivating factor to play lacrosse at the level you played at? It doesn't get any bigger, right? At Rutgers, it doesn't get any bigger. What was the motivational factor for you to go from the high school level to that level of lacrosse?
I just think I played with and against a lot of really good players, especially older kids who I saw, were able to play at the Division 1 level. And I kind of knew that, and my friends knew that we were capable of getting there if we worked really hard and won games and did the right things outside of practice. I had an affinity for probably playing at that level just growing up. Being local to Syracuse, I got to go to a lot of games, whether it was football, lacrosse, whatever, at the Carrier Dome, which was an awesome environment. Syracuse had won championships. It was a really, really cool place to learn the game, to watch college lacrosse, and to kind of just see what it's all about. So that's really where my love for it came. I did grow up playing hockey as well. And, being in upstate New York, we had Colgate right there. And through our travels and travel hockey, we got to see a lot of other cool college hockey games. So I always knew that I wanted to play sports in college. Lacrosse was something that as I got into high school, just recognized I had a better path to get there than hockey. So lacrosse kind of became my love and what I decided to do.
And it took you to now. How'd you end up at Rutgers? Out of all the schools that you were talking to, how did that one become the answer?
It's kind of crazy. Both my parents went there. My dad
Okay.
wrestled. My mom was a gymnast, but like they weren't really pressing me in that direction. Rutgers had recruited me very early in my junior year, and then their coach, who is now my professional coach for the Whip Snakes, Coach Stagnita, um, he had told me that the class was full, and in one of our last club tournaments that I was playing in prior to being a senior, I saw him on the sidelines watching, our age games, which means he was looking at 2011 grad years. So I reached back out to him after the weekend, and he said he was trying to track down one more guy for his last spot in his class. And I ended up committing to Rutgers shortly after.
Wow. So your dad was a wrestler there,
Yeah, he was.
and your mom was a gymnast. What year did they
Yeah.
graduate?
I believe 83.
Okay. Wow. I mean, wrestling or Rutgers wrestling right now. You don't get much bigger there either.
No, I don't know if they were that good when he was there, but they're pretty good now. I know he's certainly proud about it.
He probably know, maybe not. One of the guests on the show, Tom Caravella, he wrestled at Rutgers, but he's a couple years younger than me. So if your dad graduated college in '83, I got out in '87, so this guy probably got out in '90. But he wrestled at Rutgers too. So think about your college experience, Joe. How did that prepare you, get for with regards to your personal growth and development. So when you graduated, you're able to do all these things you're doing now.
I think just like being a college athlete taught you so much discipline to even get playing time. You had to do so many things right. Um, whether it was not getting in trouble with school, doing all your assignments, getting good grades, it was just like a full-time job. And unless you could really figure out how to rely on yourself, you were going to struggle. And you saw kids struggle. And fortunately, you have the guidance of a lot of older guys who've been through it for a few years. So you have like the hacks and the intel right away. But to pick up on that stuff, it was fighting for survival, to start. And I think it just gave me a leg up, in the working world and the professional world because everything was earned, nothing was given, and it was truly like a test every single day.
I mean, that's huge. Everything was earned, nothing was given. And that transition, Joe, from high school to college, and I talk about this with a lot of athletes that come on the show. Talk about what that was like. You left high school, you were the man probably, right? You're the best guy in the team, everything is great, you're having a lot of fun. You get
I
to
was one of
Rutgers,
them. We had a couple other kids who went on to play. I grew up playing hockey and
right?
lacrosse with them. I was fortunate to be around other good players, so maybe
Yeah,
I wasn't the best, but I think we were all pretty good.
pretty good. Okay. So what was it like walking on Rutgers as a freshman, seeing all these older guys, going crazy, doing great? How was that transition for you, and what was the pressure like to walk into that environment?
You don't really know what you're walking into until you get out on the field and you just see these guys are bigger, stronger, faster, quicker at making decisions. So like the pressure was pretty immediate because you're fighting all these other little battles to try to just stay afloat, whether it's being a student, adjusting to the sleep schedule, managing your classwork. But like right away, you kind of feel that pressure of like, if I'm gonna play, there's so much I'm gonna have to do.
So college lacrosse, it's like a job. It is. I shouldn't say it's like a job. It is a job,
It is a job, yeah.
right? And then academics, and then your personal life. How did you balance all that?
At first it was tough. I think my first semester as a student was probably my most challenging, just getting used to all the demands. Like it's not high school where all your classes are in one spot. You have time set aside. There it wasn't a normalized schedule. You practice and have to commute like in between all of that. It's not like, oh, 7 to 2 or 8 to 3.
Yeah.
We're in school and then go to practice and you do your homework. Managing my time was something that like it was new. I had to get used to it. I had to figure out what worked for me, and it was a little bit of trial and error to start. I think what I would give advice to kids, and I do, that I coach now, is like it's not always you're not always going to be like as successful right when you start something, and like I
Hmm.
probably didn't give myself enough grace and was not like a little bit tough on myself adjusting. But over time, you learn the things that work, and the days where you have good days, you kind of go back and try to copy the template. And that really became my identity. That first, second half of my freshman year was just the things that I knew worked, like stick to the basics all the time.
At all the things going on, what were the valuable lessons you learned that work for you?
I think the biggest thing is like you got to take care of yourself first. If you're not feeling good, whether it's like what food you're eating, how much you're sleeping, what you're doing, like when you have free time, you're not going to be happy, and like none of it's going to be fun, and you're not going to enjoy the grind. So like taking care of myself was first, and then like making sure if you want to achieve anything that you're outworking the people next to you. And like
Mm.
simple things I did that, went a long way over time was like extra reps in the weight room, like going a little bit early to do treatment and play wall ball, staying after practice to work on my face offs, like all those little things that my coach would say, great players do, is put in extra work. Like I didn't see results, until my sophomore year, which wasn't until, February we started playing, 18 months after I got there.
So that's a great point. So when did the light bulb go off, Joe? When you say, "Hey, you know what? I can hang with these guys. Like I belong out here. I can play with these guys."
It was my first game sophomore year. We played like not a great team, but I had a pretty strong game, and I was like recognized that I could be a difference maker, and could make like all the plays that I had practiced. My freshman year was like survival mode. Um, you have ups where you have good games, and then I go against like an all conference guy and get beat up on a little bit and be like, damn, I'm not quite there.
Who is it? Who, is there any specific name that you played against that just constantly was the guy just had your number?
My freshman year, there was a kid, Thomas Kroonquist out of Villanova. He whooped me bad, and he was like all conference Big East. And then my sophomore and junior, I actually got the better of him. There was a kid
Okay.
at Georgetown, Tyler Narr. I think my freshman year we were pretty even, and then my sophomore and junior year, he kind of whooped me. So like he was one that I never really got the better of. He was very good.
Right.
I'm trying to think of other guys like out of our conference battles. I kind of did well in conference, so what there
Yeah.
wasn't like really guys who I'd say had my number. It was always one or two games a season, my
Yeah.
sophomore and junior year, that hurt me in terms of not being selected as an All American. But face-offs are tough. You know what I mean? Like if you
Yeah.
get beat one or two matchups, like you're not going to be, the top three All American guys.
That's great. Now, when you were
One
playing,
bad game.
I was talking to this one guy, lacrosse player, not too long ago, and all he did was face-offs. Then he would go off the field. Now when your role, were you doing face-offs and staying and playing, or were you just facing off and
Not really, no, like, face-offs has become such a big part of the game, like, usually that guy on the team, like, that's his role. By the time I was a senior, I was playing a little bit on the man down team, but I wasn't taking regular midfield shifts, and, like, right now, I think in Division 1, you're probably not gonna find anybody in the country who's the number 1 face-off guy and taking midfield shifts.
really? So they do the face-offs and they run off the field.
Yeah.
That's it. So time-wise, they're
I mean,
probably
people say that's it, but, like, if you're a good offensive faceoff guy who can win forward, like,
right.
you're kickstarting offense, you're the leader of that
Yeah.
transition game.
Yeah, you're like the quarterback of what's going on.
Yeah, for the initial 10 seconds, that's
Yeah.
right.
So how many face-offs a game does the team actually have?
Depends on the score, right? You're gonna get 4 no matter what for the quarters,
Yep.
unless there's a penalty to end a quarter, and then, in a typical 10-10 game, you're taking about 20 to 25 faceoffs.
Wow. It's a lot of plays.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure. So talk about that, Joe, from the pressure. You're the guy out there now. You're the lacrosse, I mean, the face-off guy. They're all counting on you. What's that like when your head's down, you got the ball there in between the thing, and you're waiting for I guess the whistle blows and it's go. Like, what's that like being down there thinking about what's going on? And do you feel the pressure? Hey, the team's counting on me to get this going.
Yeah, it definitely heightens early in the game to kind of set the tone. And like if the other team scores a goal and later in the game, like for sure, when it comes down the stretch, like there's definitely pressure inherently because you sense the tension on the sideline and on the
Yep,
field. The best guys can block it out though and just focus on hearing the whistle
yep,
and doing what they got to do, just like anything else. You try to block out all the noise and just
yep.
fall back on your process, take a deep breath, and go for it.
What kind of self-talk's going on down there? Anything when you're down there
Yeah,
ready to
I'm
go?
always just telling myself to like let stuff go, focus on the next one. Like this one's got to be mine. And if there's a few things like that I know have worked for me, whether it's technique wise or thinking about the referees and anticipating, like I try to stick to those and I play a little
Yep,
bit of trial and error. For me, like the self-talk revolves around like recoaching myself on what to do and what I would
yep.
tell somebody else if I was the third person and they were in my shoes. Like, hey, just go out there, reset your mind, be focused, and be ready to react to whatever happens.
As an athlete, there's so many distractions, right?
Yes.
And you could let so many things into your head. And then I think the biggest thing that athletes deal with sometimes is doubt, right? Self-doubt. Hey, I don't know if I can get this done. I should be here, but can I get this done? Will I get it done? And I think the more they think that way, the less they get done. But if they do, like you said, they block it out, they get it out of their head, then they just perform they revolve or rely on their training, and they're out there performing.
Yeah, and like I've, over the years worked with sports psychologists who helped us at Rutgers. I still talk to him every now and then. He has a lot of great strategies for refocusing here. But like even just watching sports and seeing guys compete and watching some of the stuff that's available to us on YouTube, Netflix, whatever
Yeah.
about like, the high level performers, like they're always kind of talking themselves through things and telling themselves, breathe out the doubt, breathe in confidence. Like
Yeah.
you just have to continue to preach like on the right side of that to yourself, or else, like you said, it breeds doubt and
Oh, yeah. And it's hard to get out of your head sometimes,
yeah, for sure.
you know? So what advice can you give younger guys, they're aspiring to play college lacrosse or really any college sport, but let's say lacrosse. What advice can you give the high school guy coming out of school to prepare them to be ready for that?
The biggest three things that I say is like strength training, nutrition, and like getting your weight up has to be priority number one. Like physically, you have to put yourself in a position to compete, and where you think you are, like, is probably not that close compared to where you need to be. Number two is like you got to really be a student of the game. That's the biggest jump from high school to college and even college to pro is you have to be a film rat and love
Mm,
watching as a student and a spectator to try to observe and be better. And I think that's something that's helped me continue to get better as I've gotten older is watching a ton of game film and really being a student. And then three, I think you have to master your craft and try to expand your game. Like you see all the time in sports like yours and mine, football and lacrosse. Like some of the best lacrosse players change positions in college, right? They do whatever the team needs to get on
yep.
the field. That's what I did. I was a midfielder that turned into a face-off guy, and being a midfielder from my background has helped me be a face-off guy who's can score goals and serviceable with the ball and can pick it up off the ground and play a little defense. And those are all things I pride myself in for my game. But you have to be very versatile, right? You never know what the team's going to need. Initially, you got to go in there expecting like you're probably not going to be a starter from the time you get there. So how do you find a role to do something that like no one else can do that the team needs? And for me at the time, I was really good at ground balls and I was tough and I played hard and that found me a spot on the field as a face-off guy when I was, 18, 19 years old going against 22 and 23-year-old men.
Yeah. Now, Joe, did you find guys that when you were playing, like you just said, hey, find a role, get a role, find a role that you can contribute and participate. Did you find guys as you were growing up and playing that say, I'm just doing this. I don't want to do anything else. If I can't do this, I'm not playing. I don't want to play.
Yeah, there's always people that are like that. And it's a little bit of like a fixed mindset. And
Right.
obviously they're not like the coach's favorite kids. But like I joke about it, everyone's grown up with the person in lacrosse that says they only want to play attack and score goals.
Yeah.
Right. And like I think one thing that made my upbringing funny was, on our team, we didn't have a goalie when we were kids. So everybody had to take turns playing goalie.
Ugh.
And I think something like that just helps you be able to adapt on the fly and like knowing that's coming and you just got to do
Yeah.
do your time for the team was something like I might not have thought about back then, but I realized like today, you got to do whatever the team
Yeah.
needs. And those
Oh, yeah.
no matter what you're doing, right? Your role always can change. And if you're able to adapt and help in any way you can, you'll always be an asset.
All right. I got to ask you a really dumb question. All right. Goalie. Why? Why don't the goalies wear leg pads?
They do an indoor. They're almost like monster shin guards, kind of a hybrid
Right?
between hockey pads. For outdoor, they don't. Um,
Why? It's
I don't know.
crazy.
It's crazy. The ball travels pretty hard. It
Oh my
doesn't.
God. I remember I don't know I don't know if you were with us, Joe, but we spoke to the Rutgers lacrosse team one year in the locker room. Were you with us for that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. And the goalie, I forget the goalie's name. He wasn't that big of a kid, but he was good sized. Joe, his legs were black and blue. Like I'm like, what happened to him? He's the goalie. From all the shot and getting hit in the legs. Like,
Yeah,
why don't they wear pads?
I don't know. I
Is it
think
just
it's a
because?
pride thing because, like like in the old days, some guys would wear shin guards,
Right.
but you're not. There's no way you're covering your whole leg. So I think it just evolved to like goalies embracing that toughness aspect of soaking it or eating the shot.
I mean, that thing's gotta hurt.
Yeah.
Like Jesus, I wouldn't want to get hit with that thing. So how about yourself, Joe? Any specific moments that in your athletic career where you had some major setbacks?
Yeah, I mean, both times I tore my ACL were like 1 year setbacks. Those are
Mm.
probably my two biggest. I haven't really had any other major injuries. So those are really the two that I kind of lean on.
So how did you handle that? What was the mental stress like? Was what was the rehab like, and when did you know, hey, the lights at the end of the tunnel with those injuries?
Yeah, the first time I was playing for the Boston Cannons and I was coaching at Harvard still. So after I had surgery and kind of got back on my feet, I was around lacrosse every day. I was able to work out every day. I was able to get treatment pretty accessibly every day. Um, and I felt like I kind of cruised. I was 25. I was still in I was in good shape. I was eating well. I was around lacrosse all the time and I was motivated because I had this stick in my hand every day and like I knew I was going to be back and like it was kind of naturally the off season at that point and I hadn't played indoor yet. So I kind of just was around people achieving at a high level all the time and it made me stay positive and continue to work hard and I played my first game back like 8 months after surgery, which is pretty wild.
Yeah.
The second time was a little bit longer of a recovery. I kind of knew that because it was a revision. So it was 11 months before I played again. But I also like I looked at it a little differently in the sense that, I had almost played 10 years. I had never really had a break for a year from playing.
Yeah.
So I saw that as an opportunity to grow in our face-off factory business and my real estate business, and a chance to like see my family more often. And there was a lot of positives that came out of it. And I think I came back with a very good headspace about continuing to play and battle through injury. I came back stronger and faster and was patient with the recovery and just trusted the process. And I think it taught me a lot about just appreciating all the little things that you get to do when you are an
Mm.
athlete and not to take them for granted. So I've kind of made a promise since the second injury that every game that I have, like I'm going out there to have fun. There's no pressure.
So the injury, you know, how was that mentally? I know you stayed around the game and stuff, but how was it when, you were those first couple of days? Hey, after the surgery, like you're bending your knee for the
Yeah,
first
yeah,
time. And
you're
what's that
bummed
like?
out for sure. You just recognize like your life as you know it is changing a lot. Um, and I think it's funny to think about now, but you don't realize how much actually does change. Like from the minute you get hurt and where you're at in your life, like 10 days later, like you're in a completely different spot.
Yeah.
So just kind of going with the flow at that point, you're not really in control of how long it takes your body to recover. So it kind of just lets you like I became at peace with just feeling through the process and letting time do its course. And sometimes like in your life, you just have to kind of be where your feet are and do the best you can and let time run its course. And it kind of taught me like the value of patience.
So you're a professional lacrosse player when this is going on, right?
Yep.
You're getting paid to be out there. What's it like knowing, hey, or maybe what's it like thinking, am I going to get my spot back? Am I going to be able to do that again? Or is being that I'm out of the game for 8 months or 11 months, am I going to not get back out there?
It's definitely a scary feeling. You don't really know, and I think it's never guaranteed, like, in pro sports, it's never guaranteed, and, like, I think what it retaught me is you gotta earn your spot every day, and the best guys do that, right? No matter what sport it is, no matter what profession it is, the best guys earn their spot every single day, and it never stops. It never stops because there's always gonna be someone out there who wants what you have, and they're coming for you. And for me being like, it kind of flipped the script for me, like, not that people were chasing me anymore. Like, I had to chase to get back and get back to the top. And I wasn't coming back to just to be an average player. I was coming back to try to be the best.
So how did you handle that? How did you stay motivated through those? I mean, it's not like it's 8 days or 8 weeks, just at 8 months and 11 months.
Yeah. I mean, I think it starts with the people that you have around you, right? Like, I'm lucky that I train at an awesome place where, I did my rehab in house this time. So I'd get to work out, I get to do rehab. I coach one of my weekly sessions over there. So I'm still around kids, I'm still around the whole strength staff. Like, and those are all high performing people who challenge you on a daily basis. And even like when I didn't feel my best or didn't want to do my best, like they helped force me to be my best so that I didn't let myself down.
Well, you're reading my mind because my next question is was like, well, describe some sort of scenario in your competition, and it could be college, could be
Yeah.
professional, that brought out the best in you. Like this moment, this issue, this challenge really made me rise to the top.
I think like for me, it's face-offs is such a good metaphor for like a failing, especially like short term. And then there's been like a few games against a couple of the guys I would probably consider my rivals throughout my career where I've had like a stretch of, 4, 5, 6 face-offs or even a half of the game where I get my ass kicked. And I'm like, on my heels. You can sense the frustration from my coach or teammates a little bit. Like, we're not getting the ball. The other team has momentum. And like halftime has always been that time, like where I mentally reset and feel like I separate myself. And I'm like, this second half has to be mine. Let's take all the information we just gathered and why we weren't successful and focus on one or two things we're going to do to change it. And if we can win the first two or three face offs to flip momentum, like now I'm kind of in the driver's seat and I'm playing attack mode instead of trying to adjust and be defensive. And I don't know why, or like if it's just me being a coach and thinking a little more outside the box, has that always been a strength of mine? But like rarely am I losing the battle for faceoffs in the second half. And like, the first championship of the PLL, my first pro championship we won, I got whooped in the second half and won the overtime faceoff. And we won the game, you know? And it's like, even though I was at a low point confidence wise, I had
Yeah.
one of my teammates kind of gave me a bump and was like, let's do this thing. And like things like that, where you had to battle back, is like always where I find confidence in my setbacks now. And like that's something I've talked about with the sports psychologist Dr. Wally about, is like when you fail, you got to know like I've failed before. That's the great thing about being a veteran and having experience. You've been through some of these failures where you bounce back and crushed it. And like you just have to keep thinking that like you're going to get your bounce, you're going to get your turn of luck, and like things can
Yeah.
change like that in a game and you got to be ready for it.
Especially in lacrosse.
Yeah.
Like again, I don't know much about lacrosse, other than I watch it on TV from time to time. And you can see a game go from like 10 to 2 to now you're losing 12 to 10.
Yeah, and I've been in games on both sides of it.
Yeah. And now what swings that momentum? Like is it just energy? Is it skill? Like how do you swing it like that?
And I almost think of it like football, when you like have like you're in a flow, like
Are you in the zone?
yeah, like offensively or defensively, and you feel like you just keep getting the ball back. Like lacrosse is very similar to that. Like when the systems are working and like your teammates are kind of all aligned, everyone kind of feels that flow, and that confidence just resonates throughout the whole team and people just elevate their game. It's hard to explain, but I
Yeah.
think on the contrary, when like guys are making mistakes, the ball gets turned over, frustration starts to seep in. Like nobody plays with the same level of confidence or
Yeah.
swagger, as they
Yeah.
say. And it just easy to kind of spot. You can kind of feel it when you're out
Yeah.
there, and
Yep.
it's tough to get back. Like it just comes down, and we always talk about it with the whip snakes and the firewolves. Like you have to dominate the little plays to swing that momentum. And
Yeah.
if you stop or take the effort part of the game for granted, like that's where it starts and ends.
Hey, success breeds success, misery loves company,
That's right.
right? But look at the Yankees. You know what I mean? Like
It's, I know.
these poor guys, they just last night was a nice night, but the first three games is like everybody was stinking it up.
And baseball's like that too, right?
Yeah.
Like when one or two guys start swinging the bats a little heavy, like everyone else starts feeling it a little bit
Oh
more.
yeah.
Momentum is a crazy thing in sports, and I think it's like that in business too.
Oh yeah. You saw when Volpe hit that. Did you see the grand slam he hit?
Yeah.
Let the world. The stadium was on fire. You know. So let me ask you this, Joe. And this is a question you might not want to answer, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
All right.
You mentioned before you're 31, right? Father time is catching up to all of us. How the heck do you, at this stage of the game, because I've never played a sport, I was done at 22.
Yeah.
You're 31. How the hell do you stay in such good physical condition? How do you avoid burning out? Like, how do you stay at that peak level of conditioning for so many years and you keep doing it with no problem?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like the team you surround yourself with and the people you entrust to like help you get in shape. But I think one, you got to make sure it's fun, right? So like if you're in an environment where you're enjoying challenging yourself, like I think that's the best you can, like the best thing you could ask for. Um, but for me, like it's really been discipline, like making sure I get 2 to 3 days a week in the gym, depending on how I'm feeling, like knowing kind of where to pick my spots and like have a little bit of fun or be social or see some of my friends so you don't get burnt out and it's not all about lacrosse or all about sports. And then just like taking time for yourself, for your family or your loved ones and making sure that you're like in touch with home base and what you got going on like just a personal level.
So how do you balance? Well, how many games do you play and all the teams you're on? How many games do you play a year?
Yeah, so the PLL, the outdoor league, runs May to September, and that is 10 regular season games plus, possibly three postseason games and an all-star game if you're lucky enough to be selected. So it could be anywhere, up to 14 weekends, including training camp. And then the indoor league is 18 games, 4 weekends of training camp. And then playoffs could be as much as five weeks. So you could play 23 games plus, the possible 14. You're talking max, which are, I've been lucky enough to get to the finals both these past two seasons, 37 games roughly. in 52 weeks.
That's a lot of games.
Yeah.
So how do you find the time for your business, the real estate business, playing all these games in lacrosse, and then you have your coaching program? How do you do all that?
I'm lucky that my schedule kind of fits, right? Like I usually try to work out, in the morning or early afternoon, whether I decide to do work, on either side of that. Real estate, like I can show properties during the day, early afternoon, sometimes on the weekends. If I'm around, I also am on a great team where I can help. I have some coverage when I'm away. And then for Face Off Factory, we operate in the evenings, which doesn't conflict with much, at least during the week throughout our regular programming. In the summer, it's a little bit more like sporadic, so to speak,
Yeah.
with when our camps are and when I'm going to have to be on the road for a couple days. Um, but yeah, sometimes I try to tack on like our clinics on the weekends that I'm away and stay in places that I get to go to for work. So it's pretty cool.
So if you had to figure out hours wise between all three of those things, how many hours a week are you putting in?
I don't know, 60 hours.
A lot, right?
Yeah,
You don't sleep much
I try to.
in between, right?
Yeah,
So let me ask you this one. Nobody does anything alone. Nobody. My opinion anyway. So
no.
let's talk about, growing up, high school, college, professional. What kind of support groups do you have? Family, friends, coaches, like who stands out? Like, these are the people that are surrounding me and helping me become who you are.
I think there's a lot of different groups, which is like cool to say. My family's great. I see them a ton. I talk to them a ton. Um, I have an awesome girlfriend who supports me in everything I do. Um, my entire team, coaching staff for both Albany and the Maryland Whipsnakes, like I think are great and are always people I can lean on. I have awesome, like close friends here in Boston. And then our face off factory staff, there's like, 8 of us who are full time, more or less. Like we all pretty much talk every day. So I think having all those groups of people is pretty cool. And I have a lot of people in my corner. And obviously like the strength and conditioning staff where I train is awesome too. So like, the list goes on and on. I think
Yeah,
all those little pools of people that I work with, whether it's, Compass in the movement group or Face Off Factory or my pro teams or Team USA or the strength staff, like I could go on and on about all these
yeah,
people. And I think as I've kind of said, like you just said, and I've been alluding to, like it's all about who you surround yourself with, and like those are the people that help carry you and lift the high tide
yeah.
lifts all the boats.
Yep. Joe, I say this almost on every single show because I think every top athlete thinks the same way. Is it's all who you surround yourself with, and it's the saying will always go. You become the average of the 5 or 6 people you hang around.
Yeah,
And so let me ask you around that scenario. You're an elite athlete, right? You see guys. It might have been high school, college, pro. You see guys that you sound like the type of guy you give everything, you leave everything on the field, right?
yeah.
When you see a guy who's not doing that and he's on your team, how do you handle that? How does the team handle that?
Fortunately, there's not many, and I think it starts with the head coaches I'm lucky to play for. But like, if they feel like anyone's not up to the standard, you're gonna hear about it on either Albany or Maryland. Like you're gonna hear about it, and I don't think that it gets to the point where like it has to come from me. But if I do think there's little things like some of my boys need to pick their shit up on, like
Yeah,
I'll be the first one to tell him, and I'm not the kind of guy who calls him out in front of the group. Like I'll nicely pull him aside and be like I know you're better than this.
yep. Now, are you the captain of the team?
I am not. No,
All right. Well, you know what I always say, you don't have to be the captain of the team to be a leader.
no, that's right. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm at with both groups. We have a leadership committee for the Albany team that I'm set to start training camp with this weekend. I'm lucky to be a part of that and humbled by that. So, like, as the coaches have conversations with the captains, we're right in the mix there. So, I think that totally speaks to your point. You definitely don't have to be a captain to be a leader. And I think it's kind of an honor, that even though I'm not a captain, I'm still considered one of those leadership guys.
Yeah. And it, just because you're a captain doesn't mean you're a leader.
No, no doubt.
You know what I mean? So that's big. So you mentioned before that you sports psychologists, sports therapists, you know, how does that help you? If I go backwards in time, Joe, when I was your age or a lot younger and playing in college, it wasn't, you didn't talk about those kind of things. And the one, they didn't have therapists around to talk to anyway, but if they
Yeah,
did, you
right.
wouldn't talk to them.
No, no.
How does that help you? What kind of things do you talk about? How does that bring you to where you're at now?
I think it's all dependent on the person. I've always been like someone who just tries to push through and like be quiet about the battles that I fight, but I think that like talking about some of them is very important, especially like some of the doubts you may go through as an athlete, as an entrepreneur, as someone who's just trying to fight every day. So I think like having fundamentals and just like a baseline of things to fall back on gives you a great perspective of where you really are at, rather than just like comparing yourself to others, or looking at shortcomings. It's like everybody's going to experience highs and lows. I think sports science and psychology has really just given me a framework to work with myself and to talk myself through things that you don't have people to rely on every second of the day. And I
Right.
think without that like baseline for me, and that experience and exposure I've had to it, I wouldn't be as mentally tough. So I definitely attribute some of like my success to investing in the mental game.
Yeah. Well, can you said the word battles you deal with. Can you share some of those? Like what kind of mental battles you deal with as an athlete?
Like a lot of them are physical, where you're fighting through pain. Others are just like fighting with your time to do work and be an athlete. And then some of them are like external factors, like, not having good travel days, or, not being able to do some of the things that you want or think would give you like instant gratification, like socializing, rather than like getting good sleep and training the next day. Like, so there's a ton. It really ranges. And then on like the business side of things, like being in the sports world, like you see it every day. Like you're there fighting the battles with
Yeah.
all the kids that you're working with.
So I remember, if I go way back and remember the days where you wake up like, I just don't have it today. Like, I don't want to be out there today. I don't want to practice today, but you push through it. You make yourself do it. Hey, can you talk about how you handle those days where you just know you're just not in the zone, you don't have it, and like, how do you push through that?
You know, it's like I think those are the most important days to push through. I kind of learned that a long time ago. You're not going to be at your best every single day. And the guys who do the best, like who are the best, are the ones that just find a way to get it done even if it's not your best. And I think I've had a lot of days where it's not my best, and I've still gone out there and gotten a little bit better, and that's like a huge swing in a positive direction versus where you could go if you kind of just chalk it up and quit. And all the quitting adds up.
Now, do you see a lot of guys who come out of high school, go to college, hey, it's too much for me, I quit, or they go from college to the pro level like you, it's too much for me, I quit. Do you see that as you go to the next level?
Oh yeah. I think in college, like even as a freshman, half our class was gone by the time
Really?
we were done with that first year. And granted, we had a new coach. So it was certainly a change up. But like you see it every day and all the things, like even coaching, I see guys, not get results over 6 months, 12 months, and like, then they kind of fizzle out. And I think
Yeah.
that's in all aspects of life something you're gonna see.
What do you think of the transfer portal and all the different crazy things going on now? Like you don't like the coach, I'm transferring out.
I think in certain situations it makes sense, right? Like maybe there's 4 or 5 guys or they brought in transfers that are better than you, and
Right.
you might want to change, or the coach switches and you committed to that school. Um, but I do think that there's something to be said about guys who push through and like have that kind of football mindset of, if I have 1 or 2 good years, I could make it to the pros, or I could,
Yeah.
have a great career. And I think not a lot of people think that way anymore. Like if you go to a place that you love and you end up earning playing time, like that is such a thing to hang your hat on.
Yeah. So your experience at Rutgers, are you bleeding red still, or was that like the great experience for you?
I loved it. Yeah. And, we weren't the best my freshman and sophomore year. We started to turn around my junior year. Senior, we kind of had another hiccup. Um, but they ended up being really good, and they've been really good from that point afterwards. So I
Right.
feel like we definitely helped build the program. It
Yeah.
was something that was really important to me. Rutgers lacrosse, 3 years ago was in the Final Four, which is pretty special. They've been in the
Yeah.
NCAA tournament twice in the past 5 years. They're on the up and coming.
Yep.
And I love Rutgers football still, even though we're not quite there. And I think Rutgers
Yeah.
is elevated in all sports.
Oh yeah.
It's
I mean, now
really
when you
big.
were playing, were you Big Ten yet or no? I don't remember. Was that Big Ten yet?
Yeah, my senior year was the first year of the Big Ten.
Big Ten. What was that like switching over to that?
The Big East was pretty strong when I started with Syracuse and
Yeah.
Notre Dame, um, and in Georgetown, and it was a really good conference. And even
Yeah.
like when those teams left, we Denver bounced in and they won the championship my senior year. So like it wasn't a huge adjustment. Maryland, Hopkins, Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State. I think it was just a different feel of like all very similar schools where they're big state schools. They got other really big programs. They're national contenders in a lot of sports. So it was just a really cool, special experience.
Yeah. I'll tell you, the Rutgers athletic program in the last 15 years has skyrocketed, into really, really cool stuff. So let's talk about your athletic career, right? How has that shaped you in your professional career outside of sports?
You know, it was kind of an interesting transition because being an athlete and then being a coach, there's so many similarities. So like my first career being a college coach, like I really learned the nuances of like understanding people, mentoring kids, leadership, building a program. And like college athletics is not it's not what am I trying to say? Like college athletics as a coach, it's not all just being an athlete and like trying to get better on the field. You know what I mean? Like you're
Yeah.
managing so much outside of the lines. Like I felt like a game manager, and like
Hmm.
it was pretty cool. Right. And like we do other things in the lacrosse world, like business building for camps, clinics. Like I got experience in that. I learned how to really like I joke that I got my master's in coaching because I learned how to watch film. I learned how to like evolve lesson plans, plan practices, recruit, like all that stuff was really cool. And like recruiting brought me back to like when I was in your office and we were, I was talking with Zach about sales and like
Yeah.
how you guys bring in people. Like it's
Yeah.
very similar, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So you were learning all the stuff you didn't see while you were playing, right? You're learning all the behind the scene. Hey, here's how the team runs. Here's how the coaches think. Here's what, like you said, game planning. You're talking about recruiting. I mean, there's so many things that, you didn't see. But how about this as a coach? You were up there, when you were coaching at Harvard. I mean, you got some pretty intelligent dudes up there, right? How,
Yeah.
how did how did you handle those young guys when they were all, you know, off, having a rough day mentally? How did you handle it? How did you talk to those young men?
I think it was cool because I was like right out of the struggles they were going through. And granted, like the academic struggles at Rutgers for me may not have been as strenuous as what they were dealing with at
Right.
Harvard. And like, in the Ivy League alone, like they don't get tutors like we did at a Big Ten school. They don't have people to bounce ideas off of and,
Right.
help them with some of their assignments. So for those guys, I understood the hustle that they were going through and like what it took. So I think I was very relatable and I was a voice that they could kind of rely on with their day to day stuff. And I think my common messaging to them was like that there's a bigger purpose here than just you playing and finding the field. Like you're helping this program, this legacy, this team get better. And that, from my results, like some of that was seen after I left. And you don't always get to reap the fruits of your labor, but like the bigger theme here was like you're building something, and we were trying to build the program.
And how long were you there at Harvard?
I was there for 4 years.
All right. So what as a coach, that was your first real coaching experience, right? What
Yeah.
did you learn about yourself? What did you learn about the game that you didn't already know from that coaching experience?
That the coaches do it way more than just X's and O's and game plan. Like that's the fun part of their day. There's a ton that goes into recruiting. There's a ton that goes into practice planning. There's a ton that goes into film scouting. Like everything you do is based on trying to get these kids better. And every head coach has kind of their systems that they think help get you there. And like your job as an assistant coach is really to assist in the mission of the head coach and try to bring your best every day.
And it's that's got to be hard to do every day to be the voice of that every day, right?
Yeah, it
You know,
definitely.
it can't be easy, especially when you see the kids that just don't want to listen sometimes. But I would imagine
Yeah,
even, at any level of college athletics, I would say 95 to 98% of the kids on the team, they want to listen.
yeah, right. If there's a mutual respect, they're gonna want to listen and they'll.
Right, without a doubt. Um, so looking at current athletes, right? Managing the pressure, managing everything. What advice can you give these guys, to prepare them for life when their game is over? Because your game's not over yet, but majority of these guys, 22, 23, they graduate, it's done. Like, what kind of advice can you give those guys to prepare them for life after the game?
For one, I think like you can still play and find ways to play and use it as a tool to meet people and network and like be an outlet for working out. Like I think the game will always be a part of a lot of us. And I think even if it's not your sport, finding ways to compete was one thing, a ton of my peers really enjoyed following college. And the ones that didn't, I feel like missed it a lot.
I
But
mean,
I
are
think,
there a lot of avenues for you guys to like pick up leagues and extra old,
yeah,
graduate
I feel
leagues?
like even if you're playing like hoops or soccer or softball, dodgeball, there's a ton of stuff, like depending on where you live, obviously. Flag football, like the ways you can compete and have fun. And I think that's like a way to keep this competitive spirit a little bit
Yeah.
alive. But also like just know that no matter when you kind of play your last meaningful game, like your everyday life then becomes your game and your battlefield and your
Yeah.
competition.
That's a great point. So how much longer can you keep going? I mean, you're 31, you're still young. How long can you play professional lacrosse?
I don't know. I think as long as my body tells me I can, I still feel really good. I feel like I'm still getting better in some areas of my game. Um,
Okay.
so it's tough to really put a time on it. I
Now,
think
now, what's the oldest guy in the league? How old is he?
there's guys who are close to 40. I feel like
Oh, so you got a long way to go.
I maybe right. I think a cool kind of thing on the horizon is lacrosse being in the Olympics. I don't know if I would make Team USA in the 6-on-6 style of lacrosse, but if there's other ways, I can find a way into the Olympics through some of my family's heritage, like it'd be pretty neat. So that would be a cool cap to the careers to kind of see lacrosse through to the Olympics. So that's something that I have on my radar. And
Yeah, that
and
would
I'm
be really
hopeful
cool.
about it. Yeah.
That would be cool. When you look at athletes today, Joe, like look at Tom Brady, right? Played till he's what, 44 years old.
Yeah.
You got Joe Flacco is pushing 40. He's still throwing the ball. You got Aaron Rodgers. He's 40. You know, 30 years ago, or let's say 20 years ago, you weren't having 40-year-old guys playing professional sports. It was it
No,
was
I
it
think
was like weird.
yeah, I think the athletes have gotten better. The training's gotten
Oh
better.
yeah.
The body care's gotten better.
Yeah. The training, the nutrition, the doctors, the medications, the medical treatments. There's so much more that, and then also, Joe, I think it's the commitment too.
Yeah.
Commitment from the athletes when they realize, hey, if he's playing longer, so can I, you know? So looking back, anything you would have done different? Anything different in high school, different in college, different in your professional world? Anything you would have, hey, you know what? If I could go back in time and change this, I'd do that.
Really, the only thing that I think I would have done differently is maybe redshirt my freshman year at Rutgers. I
Okay.
think now, like you see it with kids who've gotten extra years from COVID in the transfer portal. Guys are a little bit more effective when they're older, and it makes total sense. Like, not that I burned a year of my eligibility, but I used a year of eligibility when I was 18 years old that I could have used when I was 22 and probably, been a little more impactful. And it just so happened that Rutgers, made a push to the Big Ten championship that year that I would have been a redshirt senior. So that's why I think about it. But that'd probably be the only thing that I'd change.
Yeah, and can you really control that?
No, no, I couldn't.
No, the coaches.
It is pretty cool to say, you stepped on the field as an 18-year-old freshman and you got time. There's not a lot of
Yeah.
kids who do that, and
No.
I think that's something that shows like how much work you put in to get ready for college and while you were there in that first year. And I think that's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
So I don't want to wish your life away, but what's your future looking like? What kind of goals you got? What's on your list of things to accomplish and do?
Lacrosse wise, like I'm pretty close. Like I'd love to win another championship in both the PLL and my first one in the NLL. I lost in the finals the past year in both. So I think those are two things that are like first and foremost.
Well, how many do you have?
Two,
Oh,
two
you've
in the
won
PLL.
two.
Yeah,
So you got two rings. Do they give you rings for lacrosse?
they do. Yeah.
Are they nice ones?
Yeah, they're nice ones.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So
What else?
I'd love to get another championship or two. I'd love to kind of cement my legacy as one of the top faceoff guys all time. I'm currently third in faceoff wins and ground balls for professional lacrosse. I'm kind of, maybe 2, 3 years out from getting inching up towards second. So those are like, just achievements that I have on my radar. I'd love to, be a team captain of one of these teams someday. I think there's no greater honor than being a captain of a professional sports team. That says a lot about your character and your leadership. I'd love to
Yeah.
make Face Off Factory, completely nationwide and give people access to getting coached and learning the face off part of the game because it's given me so much and has allowed me to have such a cool career and experience with lacrosse. So that's kind of our way to give back and also educate the next generation.
Okay. Now, is there a Hall of Fame for the lacrosse?
There is, yeah.
You gonna make it?
We'll see.
I would imagine, based on everything you're telling me, you know.
Maybe
I mean, if
we'll
you
be
become the
close.
all-time lacrosse or a face-off leader, how could you not be in there?
Yeah, I mean the number one spot is pretty. It's still that'd be like a 7-year reach.
Is it that many?
There, yeah, the guy who's in first played in the MLL. And the games were a little bit longer. The scores were a little bit higher. So he has his stats are good.
How about the second guy?
The
How
second
far
guy
you?
is reachable.
All right. So is the first guy still playing?
No, he's done.
Is he in the Hall of Fame?
He will be, yeah.
All right. How about the second guy? Is he still playing?
He probably will be too.
But is he still playing the second
No,
guy?
he's not. They're both about 10 years older than
All right. So they're sitting there watching you catch up.
me. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So Face Off Academy or Face Off Factory. How can people get a hold of you? They want to they need a coach. They want you to be the guy, your company to be the guy. How can they reach out to you? How can they get a hold of you?
Just faceofffactory.com. My email is simple. J is in Joe, Nardella, NJN at faceofffactory.com is the best way. We usually answer all emails within 24 hours, and we try to get everybody coached up if they're looking for it and it's feasible.
So, and now how far out do you go? Are you just in
We're
New
coast to
England,
coast. No, so
coast to
New
coast?
England is kind of like our hub. A few of our other hubs are like the Mid Atlantic region, Greater Atlanta, Dallas, California.
All right.
Yeah, we have guys pretty much everywhere. It's
Now,
pretty.
are you looking for additional coaches to be part of your group, your team?
We're really not. We're really
Okay.
not. I mean, where it makes sense, we would always consider adding if it's high level people and they can get in front of kids to coach. It's tough to just expand without boundaries. Like we really try to invest in the right people. We have limited time, so I think anyone we bring on that we're going to try to give our best for them. So like we try not to overpromise and
Yep.
help deliver where we do operate in the best of our ability. So
Now,
we are and we aren't.
are you coaching individuals? Are you coaching teams, both?
But we do small groups, large groups, individuals, and teams. I do private lessons on a weekly basis where it makes sense with my schedule. We do group training Monday to Thursday in Massachusetts in the evenings. We work with a few college programs during the day in the area up here, which is pretty neat. And we get to
Well,
help with their face-off unit and their 3-on-3 wing play. So yeah, we kind of covered the whole spectrum.
how about at Rutgers? Any luck down there working with those guys?
Oh yeah, they have a freshman who's one of my Massachusetts boys,
Oh, cool.
and they have two fifth-year seniors who are also Massachusetts kids who
Oh,
transferred in
beautiful.
for their fifth year who are studs.
Wow. Well, listen, one thing I can tell you, I talk to so many athletes, and from time to time, I'm talking to lacrosse guys, and every time I talk lacrosse, I bring your name up. And Joe, I don't know one person who says they don't know who you are. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's a testament to a lot of the things the PLL's doing to showcase their athletes and get in front of people.
Yeah. And your games are on ESPN and stuff too, right?
Yeah, the outdoor league even has some games that are featured on ABC. Both leagues, you can watch pretty much every game on ESPN Plus, which is neat if you have that. Yeah, and some of the games are on ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. And your camp opens up this weekend?
That's right. Training camp 1 of 4 starts this weekend.
Now, where do you have to go for that?
Just Albany. The first weekend we do at our home arena. We do all the medical stuff, all the paperwork, get after it a little bit, get acquainted with everybody. It should be fun.
And you're there for how long?
Just 2 days. We're there Friday night, Saturday, and then leave Sunday early afternoon.
And when's the first game?
The last weekend in November, right after Thanksgiving, we play against Saskatchewan in Albany.
All right. Now, Saskatchewan, do you ever have to go up there?
Yeah, we play them. We actually were there last year on New Year's Eve. We played them.
Oh, wow. How was that?
It's a cool little place. It's kind of like a farm prairie town.
Now, how far is that from you?
Saskatchewan, you got to
Yeah.
usually fly through Toronto or
Yeah.
Chicago, something like that. But
It's up there.
it's an 8-hour travel
Yeah.
day. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, Joe, listen, man, we talked about a lot of stuff and your last 10 years from when you were with us interning, which was great, to now you've accomplished so much stuff. You're a national phenom when it comes to lacrosse. I think the country knows you, the professional world knows you, the college world knows you, the high school worlds know you, and it's a testament to the effort and the expert that you've become in your craft. It's pretty cool. So, is there anything else I haven't asked you yet, Joe, or we haven't talked about? Do you think we should let people know we're here before we wrap it up?
You didn't ask what I thought of you as a boss.
That's a good. Feel free to tell anybody that.
No, I think people got to do their own internship for you to find out.
Yeah.
If I
Yeah.
was going to say anything, I'd say you were great, though.
Well, I appreciate that. I guess it all depends on who you're talking to, right?
That's right. That's right.
Which is great. Well, Joe, listen, I wish you the best of luck in these upcoming seasons with your business, on your real estate business. And oh, also on the real estate side, they want to get a hold of you for real estate. How do they do that?
Joseph.nardella@compass.com.
All right. So maybe we'll get some business going on both sides,
We'd love that. We'd
you
love
know.
that.
But stay healthy, Joe, and go get another ring, will you?
That's the goal, man. That's the goal.
All right. So thanks for being on the show. Wish you nothing but the best, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds great.